Peace, family, and welcome to this edition of the Draped Maniac podcast. This is Ayapo Yapo, the HDIC, that is, the head Draptomaniac in charge. And we're here to have conversations on how to get off this plantation. Now, I'm sure we've all seen movies where they're out on the open seas, you have a crew out on the open seas, and the ship starts to go down, it's been torpedoed or whatever happens, tidal wave, and the ship is sinking.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure that you listeners are listening to the Draptomaniac podcast on doayamedia.com. You are, right?
And at some point, the captain will yell out, "Abandon ship!" And everyone who's on the ship will start finding ways to get off, finding life preservers, whatever, rowboats, whatever, just so that they can get off the ship. There's also a scene in the movie Man of Steel where Perry White, played by Lawrence Fishburne, and his crew is in the newsroom, are in the newsroom, and there's a battle going on between Superman and Zod and whatever. And so the building is breaking apart. It's like vibrating as if there's an earthquake and so on. And this is going on for a while. And at some point, Perry White says, who's the leader? He says, "Okay, everybody get out of here. We are leaving." Now, in both those cases, when we see that, if you're anything like me, I'm the type of person, I look at that, that's not realistic at all, because I'd have been out of there. You don't need to tell me to get out of here. You don't need to tell me to jump off the ship, and I see that it's sinking. You don't need to tell me to get out the building, and I already see that the building is starting to crumble down around me. So I said that to say, right now, our people are getting a lot of information, and we're starting to see a lot of signs around us pointing to various things. And I don't know if perhaps we're waiting for someone to tell us we need to get out, or if we're waiting, and I'm not trying to be insulting, but this is unfortunately the way a lot of our people operate, because we've been brainwashed by a system of white supremacy, is that we're waiting for someone white to tell us that we need to get off the ship. When you got black people been telling you for years, you need to get off, this ship. We're waiting for someone white to say it, and then we'll give it some weight, or some validity. That said, when you see different things happening around you, that should be your clue that you need to start making some kind of moves one way or the other. I was thinking in terms of astronomers and astrophysicists who talk about looking into space to find black holes. And they say, of course, you can't see a black hole because it's black. And so how do you find one? You find a black hole by looking at what's going on around it. And then after you see what's going on around it, then you can pinpoint where the black hole is. And so when you see different things happening, whether it has to do with the weather, whether it has to do with government, whether it has to do with the economy, it's all telling you different things. However you need to move is based upon what those things are doing. But it seems that sometimes we're waiting for someone else to tell us what to do so that we can make a move. And that may have worked in an earlier time. I don't know whether it did or whether it didn't, but there may have been a time when people could move like that or operate that way. But now, excuse me, now it's a little more pronounced. It's a little more urgent than it was. And we have some of our people, as I said, who are sounding the alarm daily about things. And at some point, I think we need to come out of our own comfort zones, come out of our own cliques or whatever, to really start looking at the bigger picture. it was years ago. I worked at a place, where there was this, a rumor going on that there were going to be massive layoffs, and people were starting to get nervous, and it became so much of a thing that there was a meeting one day after work. And you're talking about, like 100 people. And they, like the heads of the departments called a meeting, and they basically let everyone know, or they told everyone that there's not going to be any layoffs. It's just a rumor. Everything's fine. We need to nip this in the bud and stop this rumor. Okay, fine. Everybody went back to work. 2 weeks later, we had another meeting, the same kind of a meeting. And they said, well, we're laying off half the staff. And when they said we're laying off half the staff, they weren't talking about this incremental thing. They were like, pack your junk and go. We're giving you a small severance package or whatever. But your services are no longer needed. That was half the staff that they cut without warning. The point that I'm getting at is, when they had that first meeting, they knew they were going to lay everybody off. Okay, so what was the deal with them telling them that no one was going to get laid off if they already knew they were going to do that? Because they still needed the people to work there until they could shore up their position, so they can make sure that there's a smooth transition as far as the company went. They couldn't care less about the people. They, as my wife said, they made sure that they left the people in a lurch so that the company wouldn't end up in a lurch. And that goes on all the time. But my point for that story is that is the same thing is happening with our people. This system knows that it does not want us, but to a degree, it needs us. No, well, not even to a degree. It actually needs us because capitalism requires a victim. It requires it. You can't have capitalism without having somebody being on the bottom. So it does need us, but it doesn't need all of us. It does need us to participate. And that's where it starts getting tricky, because without our participation, the system won't run the way that it's supposed to run or the way that they need for it to run. And as long as, as we see channels or Twitter or whatever, and you have different people who are flourishing, different black people who are flourishing, if you listen long enough and listen to their messages, it's always about integrating, or even if it's about fighting the system, it's talking about fighting the system to either get something from the system, like reparations, which I agree with, but like getting something from the system, or being treated fairly in the system, or getting justice in the system, and so on. And that keeps you, it keeps you working within the system and giving your energy to the system, as opposed to just getting the heck away from it and taking your energy and your time and effort and going someplace else. And they need that. They need us to constantly be participating. What would have happened if that meeting had happened and they said, yeah, we are going to lay people off in 2 weeks? What would have happened is that the people that were going to get laid off, even let's put it like this, even the people who didn't know they were going to be laid off, or did know they were going to be laid off, it doesn't matter, would have all started looking for other jobs. They'd start calling off. Some of them would just quit outright, and so on, so that they could, so they could protect themselves and shore up their positions. So it behooved the company to have everybody in the dark, thinking that everything was all right. But just like the Bible says, when they cry peace and safety, sudden destruction comes. With us, it's the same thing. I already went through that. But when you look at things on a bigger stage, in a bigger way, what you're seeing is that as we make demands, as we march, protest, beg, plead, but even not so much begging, pleading, even when we talk about making demands, taking back what's ours, and all this, I'm going to call it tough talk. Okay. While we're doing all that, we're not looking at the fact that this country is in no ambiguous way showing that it doesn't give a damn about its own people. When I say its own people, I'm talking about the people who have traditionally been propped up and given privilege within the system of white supremacy. They are now showing them that they don't give a damn about them. They're letting them sink in this present situation that we're in. They're not supporting them. There's food lines in Oregon. You have people dumpster diving at the Myers just so that they could get food to hand out or whatever. You got people getting kicked out of their homes, evictions, there's like an eviction apocalypse coming and all this. There's just like all this stuff going on. And you have a government that is deaf, blind to that and couldn't care less. And we're talking about white people they're doing this to. And so the logical question becomes, and I know it's like a broken record because I ask it almost every single time. What makes us think that we could push these people to do anything? I'm not talking about white people in general. I'm talking about the government. What makes us think we could push them to do anything? And they won't even act on behalf of the people who they have historically bestowed privilege upon. I don't understand it. I'm mystified at how our people are missing that simple thing. Right now you have white people being censored, right and left, straight up censored if they're trying to tell some kind of truth, or if there's some kind of a truther or anti-nuclear way. These people are being, or holistic, a person, who is an advocate for holistic living, holistic medicine, holistic eating. And so these people are being silenced and they're white. So what in the world makes us think that if we're trying to put out actual truth, they're not going to censor us? I don't talk about this a whole lot, but my channel on YouTube is probably one of the most censored channels on YouTube. And I mean, that's a big statement. That to me, it is. And that's because after being up here 2 or 3 years, right? And seeing the way that my numbers go, there's nothing natural about it. In other words, it's like every week my numbers go up to like 825, 827. And then it always dips back down to 823 or lower. Always, without fail. Always. And that's because you would think if you're talking about white people and dogging them out and all this, calling them different names and whatever, that our people would think, well, I see channels that have hundreds of thousands of subscribers and all they do is talk bad about white people. White people don't care if you talk bad about them. Now, the ones on the bottom may, but when it comes to the people who are actually in positions of power and the structure itself and the system itself, they couldn't care less what we have to say about them. Same analogy I'm always using. If I'm treating my wife like crap and then I go to work and while I'm at work, she's on the phone talking to everybody, all her friends, everybody about what a piece of crap I am and dogging me out and commiserating with them. And she could do that all day long. But guess what? If I get home and dinner is hot on the table, the house is clean, I'm having all the sex I want, and so I could not possibly care less what she says while I'm not around. Who cares? Who cares? And so as long as you're just talking about somebody, then, and it's not affecting the system at all. What do they care? As a matter of fact, it is actually more helpful to them because it serves as a release valve. Because what happens with our people is we tend to, conflate talking about something and talking about them bad and all this stuff as actually doing something. That's not doing anything. It's not fixing anything. You know what? Going back to my scenario about me and my hypothetical wife, it's like the other doesn't bother me. Her talking about me all day long. You know what would bother me? I get home and she is gone. Her stuff is gone. She has cleared out. It's all over. And I got to fend for myself when she was doing everything for me. Now I got to fend for myself and can't have sex anymore either. So now I'm upset. As long as all she was doing was talking, then everything was fine. But then when she actually did something to get out from under me or to get away from me, then that's a problem. And so that's why a message like mine or Ajali Shabazz and others who are about separating, that's why our messages are not popular. That's why our messages are suppressed, is because we're talking about no longer dealing with this system and getting away from it and getting out of it. And therefore, if you can get away from it to greater or lesser degrees, then they can't use you anymore. And that's what they don't want. But as long as you're fighting them or interacting with them or trying to push into their spaces or stay in their spaces and so on, then you're still giving them your energy. You're still greasing their cogs. And it's all money and power for them. Because even in the midst of us fighting for reparations or fighting for equality or whatever, who's making money? White attorneys, white organizations, white departments that are quote unquote allies, all these people, everybody's making money. In the meantime, we're not getting anything but tired. So we need to separate out of this system. And when you look at the present censorship that's going on and what's happening as far as the economy and the quote unquote pandemic and all this, it's not hard to see if you just look a little bit that the country is telling the white people in it, who they have historically bestowed privilege upon, that they can go to hell. So you know what they think about us and what and where we stand in that equation. So, not to beat a dead horse, that's how I approach things. I'm just saying, just like with the black hole, just like with the weather, there are some people who can tell what kind of weather's coming just by watching what the animals are doing or watching what how plants are behaving and so on. There's some people that have that down to an art. And they say, okay, these birds are flying in this direction. These animals are running this way. These plants are closing up and so on. Something's coming and I need to prepare myself for it. I don't need somebody to tell me. I don't need someone to tell me I need to get out of a burning building. I don't need someone to tell me I need to get out of a building that's about to crumble around me. I don't need someone to tell me to jump ship from a ship that's sinking. I don't need anyone to tell me that. I can look, I have 5 senses. I can look and see it for myself. I can tell for myself. And you have those same senses and you have an intellect that if you start looking around, you'll be like, okay, yeah, I need to get out of here. I don't need for anybody to tell me, especially white folks, to tell me I need to get out. Because as the old saying goes, by the time you see it coming, it's already too late. So I'm saying, I'm kind of altering that and saying, by the time that you wait for them to tell you it's time to get out, it's already too late. It's already too late to get out. Just like when they called that meeting that morning, by the time that they called that meeting, the second one, and they laid half the staff off, it was too late. It was too late to do anything. The people left work that day and had to start scrambling. So I love your family. I'm concerned for our people. And I just want us to really understand what's happening around us and what we need to be doing as individuals. We may have to be a little creative on an individual basis because each person's situation is different. Each person's situation is different. And so it has its own nuances. Sometimes it's based upon finances. Sometimes it's based upon your health. There are certain things that you can or may or may not be able to do because of your health or some physical problem, or because of a financial situation or a familial situation, with your family and so on. There are as many reasons and ways of things happening as there are people. And so that's why all we have to know is that we need to get out. And that doesn't necessarily even mean leaving the country, but we do have to get out or separate as much as possible from this system. And we can, just by listening to others, researching and so on, figure out our own escape routes. But the important thing is to know that you need to get out and to figure out an escape route and then follow that plan. So that's about it. I want to thank you all for listening to another Drapetomaniac podcast. This is Ayapo Yapa, the HDIC. That is the head Drapetomaniac in charge, wishing you peace and blessings, safety and security and sanity through separation. Until next week at the same time, I will see you on the run.
And thank you again for listening to the Drapetomaniac podcast. Tune in next week at doiamedia.com. DOIAMEDIA.com. And again, we'll catch you on the run. Peace.